One of these is my first 5-star read of the year, and another one almost put me in a reading slump. We're gonna go through all 11 books that I read this spring and rank them from worst to best, and I'll let you know which ones I think you should be reading. So like and subscribe and let's get started. Coming in dead last at number 11 is As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. This follows a young Southern family as they try to transport their dead mother's body across Mississippi to her final resting point, and it's considered one of the great American classics. But unfortunately, I hated this book from start to finish. The multiple perspectives, the stream of consciousness writing, and the fragmented narration literally made me feel like I was deciphering code the entire time, yanking me out of the story nonstop. And though I can absolutely understand and appreciate Faulkner for trying to be innovative in his writing style, it constantly took you out of the story to the point where you weren't really focusing on that, you were just trying to focus on what the heck he was trying to say. Also, side note, this book was extremely racist. Now, I understand that's kind of a staple in classic American literature, but I'm god dang tired. Like how many, oh my, every single time I was like really focused on trying to see what he was trying to say, they would say something crazy and it would just be like ice cold water being poured on me, and it constantly yanked me out of the story. So from trying to understand and decipher what he's trying to say and see which narrator is actually reliable to the fact that it was extremely racist, I couldn't catch a break in this book. That is why it is dead last. If I could rank this a -1 star, I'd be guilty as charged. Now this next one will probably upset a few people, but hey, this is my show. I'm just trying to be honest with y'all. Coming in at number 10 is in fact Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Now if you're not familiar, this follows a very toxic, obsessive relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine, and it's supposed to be one of the greatest classics of all time, like period. But I think for me, my biggest issue was I just didn't enjoy spending any time with any of these characters. Literally every single one of them were crazy out of their mind. There was not one redeeming quality in any of them. I hated all of them, and it wasn't one of those situations where it's like you love to hate them. They were genuinely just toxic, miserable people, and their misery had this generational ripple effect that literally affected everyone around them. And after a while, I just was no longer emotionally invested. I was just exhausted. It just felt very cyclical. They kept doing the same thing over and over again until somebody died. But on the other hand, just to play devil's advocate, I do understand why this is such a great classic. The atmosphere is absolutely incredible. The gothic setting is literally unforgettable. It's one of the coolest parts of this book, and I think Emily Bronte does an incredible job of showing the negative sides of human emotion, of obsession and toxic behavior, and the idea of confusing love with possession. But I think appreciating what a book is doing and actually enjoying it, baby, those are two very different things. So if you like dark, messy, psychologically complex characters, give her a shot. If not, you're not missing much. Now coming in at number 9 is a book completely out of left field. I just found it randomly on my Libro FM. Every single month I get like a few free books, and it was one of those on the list, and I was like, why not give it a shot? And it's called Love Machines by James Muldoon. It's a non-fiction near future story exploring relationships, both romantic and platonic, with regards to AI. And I love this book for multiple reasons. I liked it first of all because I was learning something new. I didn't know how pervasive the idea of artificial relationships or parasocial relationships with AI was getting, and I want to know and be more informed so that I create better boundaries with myself and my technology. I think it's just one of those books that is just necessary for the times. It's extremely informative and just helps you make a more informed decision on how you interact with your technology. But I also like that this book played devil's advocate. It wasn't just condemning AI and technology and moving forward. It was also looking at the potential benefits of having something like this for people who are extremely lonely. But it was one of those situations that by the end of the book, you came out thinking, you know what, this is something that I have to take in moderation, and I need to know what my boundaries are with my technology, which I think is very helpful for all of us because this technology isn't going anywhere. So you might as well be armed with this knowledge and the potential ramifications so you can create the best boundaries for you. So overall, it's a 9 because it wasn't necessarily fun, but I do think it was a necessary read and I learned so much from it. Now, for the last 3 to 4 years, I've read over 50 books every single year, and number 8 is genuinely one of the most insane books I have ever read. It is called Cruelty Free, and this is by Caroline Glynn. This is another book that I found on a whim, and it follows this woman who used to be a huge star in Hollywood, her fall from grace after a tragic situation that happened with her daughter, and then her unethical rise back to stardom. I want you to go into this book knowing as little as possible like I did, because I can guarantee you there will be multiple instances in this story where you will have no idea where it's going. Some of these plot twists, I literally had to pause it a few times because I was listening to the audiobook and just sit there in silence because I could not believe what I was listening to. It is absolutely bonkers, but so entertaining. And I think at its core, it's a story about revenge at any cost and the mental deterioration of a woman who just simply could not handle her grief. From start to finish, this book will have you feeling every single emotion imaginable. And I don't even think it's necessarily the story that's good, but it's just so unbelievable, so salacious that it will keep your attention from start to finish. So if you want to be kept guessing and want to be entertained, this this is the book for you. All right, now enough negativity. From here on out, these are books that I actually enjoyed and would recommend. Now, that's not to say that I liked all of these books equally. We're still ranking them. They're just books that I would actually recommend. Wait, I'm just realizing you can hardly see me. Hold on. Now, at number 7 is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And I know that this is a lot of people's favorite classic, and honestly, I kind of get it now. Now, if you've never read this follows Jane from her childhood all the way to her adulthood through some really terrible circumstances. It follows her through falling in love, and it also shows a woman trying to find out who she is in a world who is constantly trying to tell her who she should be. I think I expected this passive Victorian protagonist who made her entire life about her husband, but instead I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that Jane was stubborn, opinionated, and brutally honest, like constantly. But if I can be candid, I think the reason why it's not higher on my list is honestly the pacing. There were sections that I absolutely loved, and then there were a few sections where I just felt like it was taking forever to move on. And it was always about the most minute detail that didn't do anything for the plot. I think it's just one of those stories where I can understand and appreciate what it did for writing, but it wasn't one of those stories that I was fully obsessed with the entire time. If you love character-driven stories and watching a woman slowly grow into herself, I think you're gonna love this. But if you need a little bit more action or a faster plot, you might not like it. Overall, it really just felt like I was spending time with a really interesting person. Not every single conversation was worthwhile, but by the end of it, I was really grateful that I read the book. Coming in at number 6 is The Secret Garden. This is a story that follows a little girl named Mary Lennox. She's actually an orphan, and she discovers this hidden garden at the same time that she starts to heal from loneliness and grief. Now, I completely understand why generations of people would love this book. It's comforting, atmospheric, and genuinely really sweet. But I think my issue with it was it just wasn't particularly memorable. It was cute, I'm glad I read it, but I'm never gonna think about it again. Also, just to put that out there, it was also racist. So naturally, it puts a little bit of a damper on my perspective. Don't shoot the messenger. But you know what didn't put a damper on my perspective? Number 5, which is So I Met This Guy by Alexandra Potter. I genuinely had so much fun with this book. Now, this follows Maggie. She's this woman in England who thinks that she just found the love of her life in this charming man named Theo, until he runs off with all of her money, security, and sense of self-worth. Then she meets Flick. She's this young journalist who's trying to expose him. So together, these two women travel across Europe trying to find this man and bring him to justice. And don't get me wrong, this story is hilarious, so relatable, and just one of those books that you really want to root for the main characters. But outside of that, and outside of the actual chase of this man, I think what made me fall in love with this story is the two characters, Maggie and Flick, and their relationship. They start off wanting two completely different things. Maggie wants justice and some sense of closure, and Flick really wants a story that's going to break her out in her career. But as the story progresses, their friendship becomes like the heart of the story. I just loved watching how these two women who were in very different stages in their life completely changed the other. And I think that's really where the book worked for me. It's such a great balance of being entertaining, but also having a real message. Yes, it's funny and entertaining, but I think it's also a really good commentary on shame and manipulation. And I think she did a really good job of showing how easily people are willing to judge women who have been deceived instead of judging the people who have deceived them. I think the only reason why it sits at number 5 is because I know it's just a commercial fiction, so it's not necessarily a groundbreaking read, but it's one of those books that you'll really enjoy from start to finish. Finally, onto the books that I absolutely loved and would highly recommend. Coming in at number 4 is The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. Now, this is actually the same author who wrote Haunting on the Hill House, which is a very popular horror novel as well as movie adaptation. Now, with The Lottery, Shirley Jackson was able to do more in 30 pages than some books do in 500. Now, if you've never read it, it's a short story that follows a small town gathering for this annual tradition. Now, that's all I'm going to say about this story, because the less you know going in, the better. All I will say is, after reading this, I fully understand why this story is still talked about almost 80 years after it was published. It's one of those books that start off completely normal, innocent even, until you slowly start to understand that something is deeply, deeply wrong. And I think that's why I personally love the story so much. Shirley Jackson isn't screaming at us to pay attention. She just quietly lets this horror unfold and trusts you as the reader to figure out what's going on. And I think for me, that somehow makes it 10 times more disturbing. It's short, brutal, and completely unforgettable. I highly recommend it. You can read it in less than 30 minutes. At number 3, we have The Bandit Queens, and honestly, this was one of my favorite ones by far. It was just such a fun surprise, and it follows this woman in rural India whose husband disappeared years ago, and the entire village assumes that she murdered him, which is absolutely unfortunate for her, until other women in the village start going to her for her expertise in disposing of men. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this one because I already did an entire dedicated reading vlog for this one, so I'm just going to link it down below, but I will say I had had such a fun time. It's so informative. I learned so much about Indian culture and what it means to be like in a community that helps one another. And I think that this is one of those books that you should absolutely add to your TBR, especially if you're a woman. So it will be linked down below. Coming in at number 2 is Martyr, and it's probably one of the smartest books I read in a very long time. This follows a young man named Cyrus. He is an Iranian American who is obsessed with the idea of death, meaning, art, addiction, and just what it truly means to live with a purpose. Now that probably sounds extremely depressing, but this book was anything but that. It was somehow funny, strange, extremely thought-provoking, and somehow left you more hopeful than depressed. And it's one of those books where I had to keep stopping continuously to underline, highlight, or dog-ear a page because the author would say something and I would just be left there stunned and really just trying to make sense of what I just learned. The conversations this story had about grief, identity, family, and just overall purpose in life felt so much bigger than the actual plot. And I think what left me really impressed was the fact that it would ask these huge philosophical life-altering questions, but then somehow still not sound pretentious. And it's not like they answered every single question they posed to you as the reader, they just made you think differently. And I think that was so beautiful. He's not pretending like he has all the answers to life or the world, but he's making you think in a way that's maybe a little bit different than you usually do. And for that, I highly recommend this book. It's not always going to make sense, and sometimes the change in POVs can be a little confusing, but it's definitely one of those stories you have to check off on your TBR. Anyway, last but not least is my favorite read of the entire season and my first 5-star read of 2026. That is Heart the Lover by Lily King. Have you ever finished a book and immediately wanted to jump back into the story, start it all over again with none of the knowledge of what was going to happen, or being completely obsessed with the author, wanting to read their entire backlist? Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me with this book. I was left stunned. I could not put this book down. It's like less than 200 pages, I think, and I read it all in a single day. And I think overall what I love so much about this book is that it understands people, not characters masking as people, but real, genuine human flaws, human connections, and human growth. Every relationship felt real, every conversation felt real, every insecurity, every single moment of hesitation felt like a real person's life experience. There were so many times where I honestly felt like I wasn't reading a book. I was just observing someone's life just unfold. And that rarely happens. I think plots are difficult. I think prose is difficult, but making a character feel like a real human being, that is so rare. And it's definitely one of those books that remind me why I love reading. It's really just a story about love in every single capacity, from friendship to definitely romantic and community, self-love and self-discovery. It is just so beautiful. And by the end of it, you will 1000% come out with like life lessons that will alter your life. Sorry, not to be dramatic, but genuinely that's how I felt by the end of it, and I can't recommend it enough. This is also a book I did a full-on vlog for, so I'll also link it down below if you want more specifics on how I'm feeling with this one. But it's one of those books that I have not been able to forget. I read it, I think, in April, and it's the end of May, early June, and I still cannot shut up about this book. I think if you take anything from this list, it's that you should absolutely read, first of all, The Lottery, because it's so short and it's a really good book, as well as Heart the Lover by Lily King. Now, just to recap, the two books that I absolutely would not recommend is As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner and Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Now for the books that I actually enjoyed and would recommend is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, The Secret Garden at number 6, and So I Met This Guy at number 5. And of course, last but not least, the 4 books that I absolutely loved and would highly recommend is first The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, The Bandit Queens, Martyr, and last but not least, Heart the Lover by Lily King. Overall, I think I had a really good reading season. I mean, there were definitely books that made my eye twitch just a little bit, but there are also a few books that made me remember why I love reading so much. And I think that's why I love doing these reading wrap-ups every few months, because there's always books that surprise me, there's always books that I didn't see coming, and there are also, of course, always some disappointments that I want to help you look out for. So now I need to know, what is the best book you've read so far this year, and what book would you recommend? And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one.